Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. I am Jay, also known as the Sims Addict. So today we are building a cabin kind of on a hillside in Granite Falls. I wanted to do a kind of holiday themed build for a while now, very winter-esque, and I didn't necessarily want to do just a traditional suburban house and then put some decorations down. So I decided to go with this cabin, kind of make it more of a destination thing. And I did have it in mind for a family. I didn't do a crazy big house, but most cabins that I have been haven't been particularly huge, and that was kind of one of the appeals of like the holidays, is you're like really on top of your family, which I mean isn't the greatest thing sometimes, but it is the holidays. So you can see here I started with the back of the lot, and that's because I utilized the terrain manipulation because I really wanted to try to make a two-tier deck system, and I think it turned out really nice. Here I'm just working on the roof. I like the way it came out. I think it's kind of a unique kind of setup for a cabin. I didn't necessarily want it to be the standard just one gable roof. I wanted it to have a little bit of an interesting quality to it because I did use a lot of stone, and I wouldn't think this is necessarily a cheap cabin per se. But yeah, it's not the biggest and it's not luxury by far, but it's very quaint. And yeah, so adding some roof trim here. You can see I tried to use the double story columns that we just got in an update. I didn't necessarily like the way that the direction was heading. I messed with it a little bit because I wanted the columns to be kind of on the corner pieces where the second story comes up to a point, but it wouldn't let me because it's trying to think of the way that the column system works in the game is it'll be half a column placed on a wall, but if you put it on the corner, it'll be the 3/4 of it. So you couldn't lift it up being half at the bottom and then 3/4 on the top. So what I ended up having to do is put a wall on the top, and then it would render it half a column all the way up. But I ended up not using it anyways. I think it looked better on the corners because I like that full face of windows in the front on the first floor. I think that turned out pretty nice. Here I'm recoloring the stone because I did want this kind of natural, more earthy color on the foundation and the rest of the build, so I made it match. And here I'm adding the little rooms on the roofs because I wanted trim pieces, but only on the edges where the like eaves hang down. I think that looks pretty good, especially the way that I kind of did the whole like loft feature upstairs. And yeah, so we're adding windows. I used a lot of these base game windows. I surprisingly didn't use as much that came with Outdoor Retreat as I would have liked, and I did kind of do a little bit more landscaping than I intended to just because I pictured this being in winter, so most of the plants die off anyways, and it's not, but it adds to it. It makes it look a lot more full. It's not, you know, this is in the middle of the woods. You don't necessarily want it to be a flat, treeless lot. So I did add a bunch of trees in here. There is not a lot of outdoor, like in terms of like living space, like a yard or anything like that. But in this area in particular, I don't necessarily know if being on the lot itself is more important, especially being in the wintertime. But I did include a couple things, like one of the main things being a outdoor fire pit out of the back, and that's at the base of the two decks in the backyard. But I did, with the landscaping, include a few of these kind of like evergreens to kind of stand out in the snow, because from the beginning I knew that I wanted to do like screenshots and everything in the wintertime and make it like a Christmassy type feel. So I did want to include some of these evergreens, and the rest of the flowers just look like filler because the snow renders pretty thick, and I think it looks really realistic in the game. I think Seasons did a pretty good job with that. But yeah, this is another thing. I kind of didn't really plan on doing a whole lot of terrain paint because, I mean, with snow, it just covers everything up anyways. That is kind of like, I don't necessarily know how much I feel about it, but it's not a huge difference to me. I just wish they could have included something in Seasons to where there was some sort of like shoveling aspect to where certain areas are a little bit less covered with snow than others. I don't know, but I haven't really played around. For all I know, there could be. Here I'm adding a lot of dirt underneath the decks because I didn't figure a lot of grass would grow under there, and the areas, because you can't place any objects underneath foundation because it snaps automatically to the top of the floor because that's what the game tries to do. But I did, in the areas between the two levels of the deck, I included some of these like vines from vampires, and I think it looks pretty good. It looks like there's like something underneath there, even if it's not the most lush. I don't necessarily know if it would be lush underneath a deck anyways, but I think it added a little bit of realism. I did use quite a bit of these flower bushes from Outdoor Retreat, and I think that looked pretty good and it fit, as well as these ferns. These ferns were pretty good, and they look pretty good in winter as well. So yeah, the bottom part of the deck I eventually put like a little outdoor eating area. I thought about putting some like plants out there, like potted plants, but chose not to, just because the game in wintertime doesn't think of those as plants, so they don't die off like the rest of them, which I understand. It'd probably be too much to do the whole system like that, but I did in the front include, eventually, like on the front porch, include some little pots, and then I used the move object cheat. They're the garden plots, and then I used the move object cheat to put some rose bushes in there, so in the wintertime they do kind of like die off a little bit, and then they'll be covered in snow, so it doesn't look like it's like a fake plant or anything. So you can just see on the screen I utilized one of the new tools I had. You can now choose the size of your UI screens, which is pretty cool. So I just decided to make it smaller. I had it bigger, but it was kind of irritating me with a couple things. But here I am working on the loft area, and for some reason, I don't know, those two areas that have the stone on them they don't have walls, and they are connected basically to the roof. So when I don't mess with it now, but later on when I try to do like these wall panels right here, it takes me a minute to notice it, and then I change it, but I didn't also realize that it changed the roof outside, so I go through and try to figure it out, but I eventually do. So yeah, I thought there was going to be a glitch and I would have to figure something out, but luckily I didn't have to. There is one bedroom and one bathroom on the first floor. You can see here I was trying to find doors that matched the set that came with the base game that I used for the windows, and there's not really 100% match to the door that doesn't have a window on it. So I thought that was kind of like, it was a little annoying. It wasn't upsetting or anything, but I eventually found these other doors and they have a pretty similar wood tone. This bedroom here, it was pretty small, so the only thing I could really include is a bed and a couple of lights, but I don't think that necessarily matters too much. I did include these Seasons lights, and I think they look pretty good with the whole cabin feel. That is a outdoor retreat bed though. And yeah, I use actually when I'm building smaller rooms like that, I typically use that little stand you seen that came with I think it was Get to Work, because it's kind of like a quarter tile size versus like the massive end tables that are a full tile size. Um, so yeah, and then I used the little exterior or the like built-in exposed shelves for the on the wall because I didn't have room for a dresser. And then in the bathrooms, I kept it a little simple. I did include some of the like laundry day stuff, a little bit of clutter here and there, and then I used this kind of like, I don't know if it would, kind of like dated matching yellow tone fixtures in the bathroom, and I think that looks pretty cohesive with what an actual cabin might look like. Over here, I wanted the kitchen to kind of be like tucked away to give the most area for the living space, because I know the Christmas trees take up quite a bit of space, and that was one of my main things in building this house, is I wanted a Christmas tree because they can be kind of hard to place in some areas. I was super surprised that it let me put a half wall underneath the stairs. I don't know if that's something we've always been allowed to do, but I was really pleasantly surprised that I was allowed to do that, and that everything in this build is functional. I play tested this when I did the screenshots, and all of the beds, all of the chairs underneath the stairs, and the counter underneath the stairs, everything is accessible, everything is available for your Sims to use. This main area here is where I put the living room, and I put a couch and a chair with a little ottoman in here, and I don't, as you can see with the couch, I kind of do this like sprawling placement a little bit. I think that looked pretty good. There's a little end table that I eventually put on the other side with one of the dated TVs that we got, and I was pretty happy with how this turned out. I didn't want it to be too cluttered because I did think of this as like a rental. The decorations are probably like what your Sims would have bring, but it is here anyways. Yeah, so putting in a couple things, I didn't want it to be crazy expensive either for realistic gameplay. I think it's maybe like 800 a night or something like that, which isn't necessarily cheap, but it's not overly expensive either in terms of vacation in The Sims 4. So yeah, and I also didn't include a crazy amount of decorations on the outside either, just because the house itself is more of like a Christmas decoration too. But I did go through in gameplay with the decorations box. I placed that upstairs somewhere, and had them put Christmas lights on the eaves and then also on the fence, and so that makes it look pretty festive. This area to the back, I put like a little desk area and then a bench. I thought that looked pretty good. I included that shelf there. I don't really use that shelf a whole lot with the little French press and stuff, but I think it was cute for this build. I thought about including something for a pet if you wanted to bring your pet, but I just didn't know if there was necessarily the room. I would assume if you didn't want the desk and you could put a pet bed down there, you would have room for it that way. And if you download this from the gallery, by all means, go ahead and do that. Here I am working on the kitchen. I did utilize the clutter objects that came with, I think they came with Outdoor Retreat. I'm not 100% sure. But here you see me use the Get to Work chair and then this like wooden desk and an old computer. It's kind of a little bit dated too. I wanted this to have kind of like a an 80s cabin feel. I was also watching some Friday the 13th and on Twitch streaming when I was watching this, so that was a little bit of weird inspiration when I was going through this. But here you can see I use a lot of the same elements of the downstairs bathroom upstairs. I did include a toddler's toilet. There is not technically a toddler bed on the lot because I had my toddler sleep on the couch most of the time. But if you wanted to, you could definitely go through and add one of the beds, maybe just replace the dresser upstairs with one or one of the other beds. There are 2 singles upstairs. So yeah, I didn't include a crazy amount of stuff up here. I have a few wall applications. I was able to include a toy chest in between one of the beds and the dressers. So yeah, you can see me trying to place a toddler bed, but I didn't think it looked right. But if you really wanted to, you could replace one of them and it would function fine. And here we are adding a little bit. I don't normally, for my own personal aesthetic, like the wood on wood on wood elements of things, but like I said, I kind of wanted to create this like dated kind of cabin type thing, and I think it looks pretty good. So yeah, adding a couple clutter items. I used a little plant there in those baskets. I think they came with either Laundry Day or Seasons. A little bit of more decorations. I put most of the Christmas decorations on the interior, and they came with Seasons in the holiday update. I don't know if we got any items with this year's holiday update, but there are some clothing items for kids and toddlers, and you will see those in the screenshots. So yeah, here is where I realized that that's because of a wall issue, and I was able to fix that. And then a little bit later, I think I fixed the other side too. But yeah, it's pretty small. But like I said, I didn't want it to be a huge build, and I think the like quaintness of it lends itself pretty nice to the holiday theme of it. But here you can see me looking for placement for outdoor furniture. That little bump out nook I thought was a cute little area to do like a little seating. There's a basketball out there. There's some lighting around, and then I also add these floor lights to the deck. I think that was a nice little addition. And then here I'm placing the fireplace, and I did use the outdoor retreat kind of like camping chairs, and then those little lanterns on sticks. And I think we're just adding some of the final elements of it. If you guys do want, my origin ID is ThornSims06, so go ahead and download this house for free. And yeah, you can see me just adding those rose bushes, and then I put a woodworking bench out here. But that is it, guys. I will be posting more videos soon, and I will speak to you guys soon. Alright, bye.
Barbenmull?